This is the Lightning Junkies podcast with your host, Chaz Cryptoson. On this episode of the podcast, we're going to have Ken from Moon. Moon is a Google Chrome extension that allows you to pay for your Amazon purchases with the Lightning Network. We ended up talking about Moon, the Lightning Network, and Bitcoin generally. This is my first episode. As you can no doubt tell, I was very wooden in this episode. It took me a moment to get more relaxed and get into the conversation. My goal as time moves on is to have a bit more energy and engage with my interviews with a little bit more gusto. Something you'll notice about this podcast is I have no sponsors because I've decided to totally crowdfund the podcast because I genuinely hate advertising in podcasts. I always try to skip past it, and it's always annoying to have to sit there and listen to it. So I'd rather have a product that I 100% love versus compromising for the sake of money. So if you want to support this podcast, please visit my crowdfunding link that's in the description, or to tip me via tipping.me or bottle.li. Here's the first episode of the podcast. Hello, Ken. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. To kind of start things off, I just wanted to ask, I hear you have a turtle.
I do have a turtle. That's a very good observation. His name is Charles, and it's a funny thing. A lot of my friends, they see my Instagram account, and it's just a bunch of pictures of turtles for the most part. So it's always fun. So that's just like my fun fact I use on all those places you need fun facts. So
Absolutely. Great. So let's go ahead and jump into the kind of more of the meat and potatoes here.
Sure.
How did you get into Bitcoin, and, how did you start that whole journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been following Bitcoin since pretty early on. Around 2010 is when I first heard about it. It was probably on Reddit. And, I've kind of followed along from a theoretical perspective, and just, I really love the idea. And 2013 is when I finally, actually went ahead and bought some Bitcoin and got into that. And I actually use Mt. Gox. So I am wrapped up in the Mt. Gox class action lawsuit. So that's a lot of fun. I get all sorts of mail from Japan. But the good thing is I got most of my Bitcoin out before that point. But I have about half a Bitcoin I'm trying to get back still. But I didn't enter the Bitcoin or crypto world professionally until last year, effectively. So prior to working on Moon, I had worked at Lockheed Martin. I had a sensor company. I had a software consulting company, and then kind of wound down the consulting operations to start this. And, having followed crypto for quite some time, I said, well, there's so much going on around speculation within crypto that it's almost unhealthy. This isn't just about trading. This is about, changing the world of money, And the biggest problem that I saw was that you couldn't really spend it anywhere. So I looked at that and said, hey, I want to attack this problem and see what we could do. And that was where Moon came from.
Gotcha. Okay. How did Moon kind of start out of that kind of idea then? Could you kind of give me a little bit more on that?
Yeah. So, it was late 2017 when I first started thinking about this. And I was like, there's so much going on. There's so much trading activity, but there's all these other not goods, but services and products that you need to have in the ecosystem for cryptocurrency to be adopted as an actual currency to buy goods and services and sell goods and services using crypto as a currency. So, so initially I had this thought of, maybe there's something with, peer-to-peer or something with that type of payment system. But I was like, let's just go for gold here. What does everybody want to do with their Bitcoin? I was like, well, they want to shop on Amazon. Hey, let me see if I can make that happen. And that was, and that's what we launched with Moon, was shopping on Amazon. And it was a matter of, starting with that problem, how do you attack it? And that was the realization. Well, hey, if you have a browser extension, you can kind of augment the checkout experience and give a consumer the option to pay with Bitcoin as if Amazon natively took Bitcoin. And I think that's a very compelling vision, and I think that's the type of technology that's going to take Bitcoin to being a full-fledged currency where major corporations want to actually accept and hold that currency. So, it starts out with these, kind of transitioning technologies, and then taking that forward to people, wanting to actually hold the Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies themselves.
It definitely makes a lot of sense there. Could you give me maybe a little bit more about, how Moon actually kind of works in practice? Let's say I'm a complete newbie out here, listening to this podcast. What would I need to do in order to start using Moon?
Absolutely. So Moon's a browser extension. So what that means is just like the browser extension Honey or Ad Blocker, you can add it to your browser. Right now we support Chrome, Brave, Opera, any of the Chrome-based browsers. We'll be supporting some of the other browsers, Safari and Firefox shortly. So you just go to paywithmoon.com, click the Add to Browser button. That will take you to the Chrome Web Store. You install it from there. And the first thing you're going to be presented with is create an account. And sometimes people get upset, oh, why do I have to create an account? And that's more for your convenience to kind of keep track of everything. And we're going to be adding additional features that necessitate someone having an account. But you set up your account, we just take your email and password, that's it. Or you can log in with Google or Facebook. And then from there, you go shop on Amazon.com just how you normally would. You just go shopping, and on each product page, we give you a little button that you can click that'll show you the price of the item in your favorite cryptocurrency. So if you want to see Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ether, or Bitcoin Cash, we'll do that currency conversion, and then you'll know, like, oh wait, I can actually afford this, right, in that currency. From there, you add it to your cart, just like you normally would, and at checkout, you will see, you'll be presented with the option to pay with crypto. Now, there are two payments options. One is to pay via Lightning Network, in which case you need to have a Lightning Network-enabled wallet, like Zap or Blue Wallet. Alternatively, and this is probably better for someone who's very new to crypto, is you can just connect your Coinbase account. So we have an integration with them. You just click a button, connect to Coinbase, you log in with your Coinbase account, and then you can pay from any of your Coinbase wallets. So it's a very simple way of going about things. So far, we've seen about 50%. 50% of people use Coinbase, 50% of the people use Lightning Network. A variety of different reasons probably for each. But anyways, you select whichever payment method you like. You then hit Pay with Moon, and that's it. You're done. Your purchase is completed.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Did you kind of start Moon with kind of a Lightning Network as a leading technology you wanted to have in there, or is that something you kind of added later on?
So initially, we had an MVP we developed, and we started with the Coinbase integration. And the thinking was, one, hey, this is easy to set up. They have an API. And two, at least in the United States, Coinbase just has a ton of users, right? So it's it was something that we thought was going to be very compelling. And then we did some market research, and by market research, I mean, we talked to people in the Bitcoin community and did a lot of learning. And, me coming from outside the core community, 2018 was the first time I ever went to a Bitcoin conference or anything like that. I was like, okay, everybody talk about Lightning Network. And this seems like, hey, wait a second, Lightning Network solves a lot of problems. And the biggest problem that we have with just using Bitcoin is that the transaction fees are high and the transaction speeds are also, it's not that fast, right? If you want to wait for 6 confirmations, on average, that's going to take you an hour for your money to go through. Where my hypothesis here is that in order for people to use crypto as a currency, you need to, it needs to be pretty much just as good as a credit card, right? or any other traditional form of payment needs to be instant, and it has to effectively have no fees, right? You don't want to pay money to spend your own money, right? So I think the Bitcoin protocol itself is fantastic for this infrastructure level. Say two institutions need to settle a payment. You want that stored in a decentralized ledger on the blockchain. That makes sense. But if I'm buying a $5 USB cable, or better yet, if I'm ordering McDonald's on Uber Eats, for instance, right? I don't want to pay a flat rate fee of $1, $1.50, whatever it is, and I don't want to wait an hour for my transaction to go through. Especially if I'm ordering fast food, it's no longer fast food at that point, right? So what's great with Lightning Network is it effectively solves these issues where the fees are near zero and the transaction speeds are near instantaneous. So we saw, hey, it looks like this is the way things are going. This is where the community is kind of rallying around this second layer protocol, and it solves the problems that need to be solved to make these, small e-commerce payments.
Okay, wonderful. You had kind of mentioned that the usage of the Lightning Network compared to like the Coinbase integration was like 50-50. Did you see that kind of trending in any specific direction, or?
Yeah, so we think, we see a lot of people using Coinbase more and more, and we think that's actually because of the hard limit that's set in the Lightning Network protocol. So there's a 0.042 BTC limit built into the protocol. So, I think maybe that's $400 something right now. The tricky thing with that is a lot of people want to buy things that are more expensive than that. So with Coinbase, there's a $1,000 limit right now. We're actually considering increasing that limit. But with Lightning Network, you're kind of capped. So if you want to buy something that's $800, you're kind of out of luck with Lightning. There are other options as far as having multiple Lightning Network invoices that can be combined to fund one larger purchase. We've thought about that a little bit, but we haven't implemented anything like that just yet. So that's kind of where we're seeing things go.
Gotcha. Okay. It kind of changed gears slightly here. In July, you had a special for purchases on Amazon's Prime Day. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were looking to do something special for Prime Day, saying, hey, this is the first time you can shop directly on Amazon with Bitcoin. Let's do something cool out of this. And we are running a company, so obviously we want to run promotions. So like, hey, let's do something cool here. So we did 5% off everything on Amazon if you buy it with Bitcoin through Moon, and that went really well. We hit records on daily transaction volume, number of transactions. We had a bunch of new folks try it out. So that was really exciting. We published a blog post about that we kind of broke down all the data on that. That's where we saw a lot of people using Coinbase because I think they just wanted to spend so much. And that was something where I think if you're going to spend a couple $1,000s on Amazon in a one-day period of time, if you have that money on Coinbase, that actually goes through a bit faster than having to constantly fund a channel on the Lightning Network or split up your purchases into smaller amounts. So, but since then we've seen Lightning Network tick back up again. So I think people are kind of picking whichever payment strategy they'd like based on how much they're planning to spend.
Makes sense. Okay. What do you kind of see as the future of Moon here? How do you see it kind of changing in the future, and how do you see it taking shape?
Absolutely. So what we're working on right now is we're expanding to additional merchants. So the most requested merchants are Amazon Canada, Amazon, all the different European Amazons, co.uk and .de. So that's what we're expanding to over the next couple of weeks. That's just overwhelming demand. I get emails every day. Hey, when are you coming to Europe? Hey, when are you coming to Canada? So that's the first step. But after that, we're going to be launching on a bunch of other major merchants so that you can pretty much shop anywhere you want. Our goal is by the end of the year to support pretty much every e-commerce website in the United States, and that's integration that we've been working on for a little bit now. So this isn't just an Amazon product. This is an e-commerce shopping with, Bitcoin and all the other cryptos, because ultimately our goal is to make crypto much more of a currency. And in order for it to be a currency, you got to be able to spend it everywhere. So that's where we're going. And we're also looking at adding some additional currencies, potentially different payment methods, different integrations, and that's very much being driven by what users are asking for. They email us all the time, hey, when are you going to add this? When are you going to add that? Can I pay from this wallet or that exchange? And things like that. So, but short term, adding more merchants so that you can shop anywhere.
Okay. What do you think about the general lay of the land when it comes to payments in, Bitcoin, Lightning, crypto generally? What do you think about your competitors out there? Are they doing a good job? And do you think you kind of have a lead on them as far as your kind of UX goes?
It's hard to say, right? Because, you never really know what other people are working on. But what I will say is that so far, having met a lot of the people in the space at different conferences and events, everyone's really friendly. I wouldn't say that we're all super hyper competitive and angry at each other. I mean, at least I'm not, and I don't get the sense that they are. But having spoken to some of them, it's the sense is more of, hey, let's make Bitcoin big enough so that we actually do compete when our companies are much larger. So I really like that attitude, and honestly, I was surprised by the pleasantness of many of the other companies in the industry. When I met them, having kind of come from outside the industry, I think I kind of expected things to be a bit more cutthroat. But our focus is not so much on the competition or what the competition is doing. It's a matter of building a great product for our customers, and kind of fulfilling our vision as we see of where we think things are going. And I think that, you need to have competition in any area, so it's good that there are other companies working on this problem, and they'll solve it different ways than we're solving it. And that's great, and we'll learn from each other, and, hopefully a couple of years down the line, some companies will acquire other companies and merge, and, and then some companies will remain and they'll compete. And, that's kind of the way these things grow from what I've seen.
Okay. Have you used any of these competitors? Have you tried them out at all?
Yeah. I'm always, testing out other products. Whenever I see something new, I like to give it a test run and see, oh, hey, that's pretty neat. That's pretty cool. And I see that other people do that with ours also. If I see, their email address, they use their company's email address to create an account. And that's fine with me. I think we're not fighting against each other as much as we're working together to bring the industry to where we want it to be.
Okay, that makes sense. How about we jump into Bitcoin, crypto, and Lightning more generally? What do you see as being the roadblocks to people getting into Bitcoin and Lightning Network more specifically?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is that they perceive risk, right? So, you have a lot of people that they don't know about investing, so they're not even going to look at Bitcoin from an investment perspective. You have people who invest, but they invest in very stable type investments. Like the stock market is even too risky for them, right? Maybe the S&P 500 is what they feel very comfortable with. And you have a lot of people who just won't even do that, So people perceive risk from the trading perspective, and they see these wild fluctuations. So they don't want to touch it from that side of things. From a payment side, and getting people to adopt crypto as payments, right now I think we're in the phase of early adopters. We have these people who, they love crypto, they think it's really cool, they're testing the technology, maybe they do some trading, and now they're like, hey, let me try to spend it. What is it going to take to bring other people in is a few things. One, they're going to have to have some compelling data to say, hey, this isn't that risky. This is a good idea, and then that's just to hold Bitcoin in the first place. Beyond that, it's a matter of what are the goods and services, and are these trustworthy? I think people have these things in their mind, like the Canadian exchange, where the CEO died or disappeared, and the money is gone. What happened? And then they still know about Mt. Gox, and you hear about all these scams and things. Coins getting stolen from exchanges, and North Korea is going after exchanges. So just that, having all of that out in the ether is what kind of, I think, dissuades a lot of people. But I think providing them with a compelling product and a compelling use case, I think that's what it's going to take to get the real no coiners in.
Yeah, I definitely agree. A lot of what I've been kind of touching on my Twitter and my blog are about focusing on the UX of things and trying to bypass as much of the complexity as possible. How would you feel trying to kind of maybe skip over the base layer Bitcoin and going to the Lightning Network directly and trying to find ways to onboard people through services like Moon, for example, on the Prime Day special, where even if they aren't a user of Bitcoin, a holder of Bitcoin, they might be able to use tools like Moon and wallets that are pretty simple and have a clean UX, maybe custodial wallets. What do you think about the idea of kind of doing something like that? Trying to kind of just leapfrog them and trying to give them the best UX possible without worrying about all the kind of intervening steps.
Yeah, I think that definitely helps, right? And that was our goal of running that Prime Day special also, is to say, hey, if someone would tell their friend, hey, I'm getting an extra 5% off Amazon if I spend Bitcoin, they're going to say, wait a second. Wait, what? Let me read up on this again. I thought, you were just some kind of crackpot investing in some magical internet money. You're actually saving money on Amazon. That's a real hard benefit that it's an immediate benefit. So things like that help, and UI UX definitely helps, right? But there's still this aspect, right? So how do you get somebody onto Lightning Network without getting onto Bitcoin first? They have to buy Bitcoin on an exchange or service that will immediately put it into a Lightning Network wallet. And then you have all the limits associated with that, and that it's custodial, right? So there are all these different pros and cons. And I'm not, I always strive to say, hey, with Moon, we want to make sure you have non-custodial options. And we're all about giving options. We're not hardcore, it has to be custodial. We hate Coinbase, nothing like that. I think the key is that the simpler the product, the more likely it is to onboard new people. And that's something that I think Coinbase has done very well. And there are other exchanges that have really created really nice UI UX, simplified things. They've had aspects of education. So you don't really have to understand the core technology at all. But I still go back and forth. I don't know what's going to happen, right? On one hand, do we simplify everything with layer 2, layer 3, level 4 in order to abstract it to the point where the average consumer doesn't need to know anything? Or is it a paradigm shift in the mind of consumers, right? Do they have to learn about, this is a wallet and this is just the way the world's going to work from now on? And that I'm still not sure on. I think it will probably be a combination of both, where you're going to have to learn some new terms and you're going to have to learn some new ideas and new concepts, because this is the underlying foundation of the new financial system. But in addition, we have to do better at creating a nice user experience and a nice user interface, because it has to look trustworthy. It has to be easy. And I think that's just naturally going to happen over time as companies and products and services compete with each other. They're competing over users, and they're going to create the best experience they can to attract those users.
Definitely, I would agree there. Do you think that the overall adoption of the Lightning Network is contingent on these merchant solutions, the e-commerce products, or do you see more novel products coming out of all this?
I think that initially a lot of the activity is going to be around e-commerce shopping, because that's just the most real demand that there is, right? And there are a lot of innovative products out there with micropayments, like little paywalls. And of course, you have all the gambling sites. You have, Y'alls, for instance, which is a very interesting model. Voting with sats via Lightning payments. It's all really, really neat ideas, but none of them have really massively taken off. I think probably the biggest service besides, e-commerce that's taken off with Lightning is maybe gambling, and that's its own world that I I don't go near that whatsoever. But if you look for it, you're going to find it, and there's definitely it solves a problem for a lot of people. But the big one, I think, that the average person can look at and say, oh, how would I possibly use Lightning Network? It's e-commerce shopping. But I think it's still to be seen, right? There could be some other amazing technology that comes out that blows Lightning out of the water, or trends go away from Lightning Network for some reason, and everybody starts using something else, right? That's kind of what's cool with crypto. It's very market driven. So we obviously see things going in the direction of Lightning Network, and that seems to be the way the winds are blowing. But you never know sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. What challenges do you kind of see with Lightning? Like, let's say with Moon, have you kind of run into any challenges while kind of using the Lightning Network as a merchant? Do you deal with channel issues, stuff like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, the biggest problem so far, and the complaint we get from users, is the limit on the transaction size on Lightning. So that 0.042 BTC limit. Hopefully Bitcoin price goes to the moon and no longer that's an issue, or they'll just increase that limit. So that's the first one that comes to mind. The second issue has been just consumer education. So I get a lot of emails from people saying, hey, how do I use Lightning Network? They like the product. They may have Bitcoin, but they've never used Lightning before. And I'll say, hey, here's a wallet you could use. And I walk them through the steps on how best to set it up. And they ask me questions like, what is Lightning? Like things like that. So I think education is definitely a big part of it, because a lot of people they want to use it. They think the idea is really cool. But when it comes down to it, after using a Lightning Network wallet, it becomes almost like second nature. But the first time you use a Lightning Network wallet, it can be so confusing. It's such a daunting task. Like, what is a channel? What does that even mean? So frequently we say, hey, why don't you use something like Blue Wallet or some other custodial wallet, just to kind of get your feet wet, and then go about, creating your own node, or, using like Zap Wallet that kind of sets up a node for you. So that's those have been the two biggest issues so far. On the technical side, I wouldn't say that there are all that many issues. The annoying aspect is when you have channels open, you're putting a lot of money out there, right? So you're operating a business, and you have money on channels. In order to get those funds out, you have to close the channel, right? So that's operating expense right there that you just have to have, and you can't utilize it for anything else. And I haven't seen any interesting service out there where you can say borrow against your coins that are used to fund channels or something like that. I think there's an interesting financial product there, maybe. But besides that, I'd say those are probably the three biggest issues.
Yeah, gotcha. I personally run a routing Lightning Network node myself, and I found that one of the most active channels that I have is with Moon itself. Is I have several open, and they ended up get depleted within like a week or something. I think opened one around the Prime Day. It was a couple $100, and it was wiped out almost immediately.
Well, that's good.
Like, how often do you see yourself kind of closing out channels? Do you ever actually close out channels? You're just going to let them just sit there and just wait to see if, maybe traffic would go in the opposite direction, rebalance them? Do you do anything along those lines?
Yeah, so we have a script that'll automatically run, and it'll automatically close out channels if we've received over a certain percentage. So that's what we do. We're still testing that to see what makes the most sense. I don't know if anybody's really come out with like a best practice around that yet, which I'd really love to see. It's just a matter of for us, it's just making sure like, okay, the channels are there. We're going to be able to accept funds, and so far we haven't had too many issues as far as people being able to find routes, as long as they especially if they were using custodial wallet. Typically the companies running the custodial wallets are pretty good at making sure the channels are open and that they're not getting depleted too quickly. Sometimes individuals, if they open up a channel, They'll open up a channel, then one of the intermediary channels between the routing nodes will be much less than the channel that they've opened, right? So they may open a $200 channel, and then one of those intermediary channels, the only connection between, say, our sub portion of the graph and their sub portion of the graph is $20, right? So they can send a maximum of $20 through, and sometimes that's very confusing to the consumer because they don't have that visibility. So I opened up a channel for $200. Why can't I only send you $20, right? So also having kind of a explaining network topology to the average consumer, being that obviously if you're running a Lightning Network wallet, you're probably a little bit more technically savvy than the average person, but it's still something that it could be a leap in some people's minds to fully understand the layout of like network topology like that.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I just kind of wanted to go a little bit more broad here and just maybe kind of touch on a couple last topics. Kind of outside of the Lightning Network, do you see Bitcoin continuing, not just in price, but just take off in technology? We have Taproot, we have Schnorr, we have other things, coming down the pipe. Do you see this very inventive core devs continuing to push and make Bitcoin more useful and things like that?
Yeah, I think what's really great with Bitcoin is it does have this big community around it, and it gets so much activity. People are working on it, and now with the larger institutions that are looking at Bitcoin, you have major banks that are investing enormous amounts of money to say, hey, now we're going to allow Bitcoin trading, or NASDAQ's getting involved in Bitcoin, right? So some people may say, hey, well, that's terrible. The traditional financial world is terrible. We don't like them. Go away. But what I think is, well, that's kind of good, because the more organizations that are relying on the Bitcoin protocol, the more they're going to invest into making sure it succeeds. So just like many companies that utilize open source software, they end up frequently either funding developers to work on it, or they themselves, people within that company, working on and maintaining those protocols and those technologies. So I think what we're seeing is Bitcoin becoming a bit more institutionalized in the sense that there are so many more parties that rely on its success that it decreases the likelihood of failure.
Definitely. Okay. Do you see Bitcoin being the quote unquote primary winner in crypto, or do you see someone else winning over the long term here?
Yeah, I think it's good. I would think it'll be Bitcoin, just based on what we see right now. Like anything could happen. If somebody, there are some really interesting models out there as far as a stable coin that's slightly deflationary or something like that, right? I think there's some interesting things happening there. It's really too early to tell if any of that stuff even works. But there are some of the brightest minds out there who are developing or who have already developed currencies. And the biggest problem that they have is that nobody necessarily holds them or uses them. But I think, Bitcoin has that first mover advantage. It has the brand recognition. It has all these non-technical features that are very valuable. Whereas a currency that maybe even has better technology may not be able to beat it out because of all of these other features that are just they're not technical at all. So I would say, if I had put money on it, I'm going to say, yeah, Bitcoin's going to be the one. But you never know. You never know. Someone can come out with some new white paper on some fantastic improvement that is structurally different from Bitcoin, right? But again, like I said, I think it's all a matter of adoption, who wants it, and where are people investing and putting their money, not just as a consumer or a retail investor, but also the institutions that are trying to build out and support this new economy effectively.
kind of mentioned the network effect there. Would you say that on Moon, are you able to kind of see when people pay with Coinbase? Did that kind of show you the percentage they're paying in Bitcoin or paying in any other altcoin?
Yeah, the vast majority is Bitcoin.
Okay.
By far, the vast majority is Bitcoin, followed up by Litecoin, then Ether, then Bitcoin Cash. So those are by far the biggest ones, and that's partially because we push Lightning Network hard, and that's just Bitcoin right now. In the future, I know that other currencies are working to adopt Lightning Network, but I don't think any have really had any significant presence there yet. But even within Coinbase, where we support all those four main currencies, Bitcoin is by far used most. So the reason for that, is kind of hard to say. I think people just have a lot of Bitcoin more so than these other currencies. The people, I would also guess that the people who want to spend crypto are probably really big Bitcoin people. So that's just a guess, because take for example, Ether, right? The Ethereum network is very much this, they're all about dApps and building this as a protocol for Web 3.0, as opposed to saying, hey, Ether is a currency for payments. So there's this interesting marketing perspective that each currency has. I mean, if you look at Litecoin, right? The whole idea that it's the silver to Bitcoin's gold, it's a marketing tactic, It's there's interesting technical features there and differentiators between Bitcoin and Litecoin, but having that that silver to gold type thing, I mean, for example, attracted a lot of precious metals investors to buy Litecoin, and precious metals investors don't necessarily shop with, they don't go to the store and pay with silver, right? As much as they may want to do that, it's not something that comes naturally.
Okay, so that's pretty much the end of the questions I had for you today. Was there anything else you wanted to add at the end here?
Yeah, I mean, we're always open to new ideas, new concepts, suggestions, and feedback. So if anybody wants to do so, we're on Twitter. It's @paywithmoon. You can reach me via email, ken@paywithmoon.com. And if you just want to give Moon a shot, try to make a purchase on Amazon. It's paywithmoon.com. And, always love to hear from people. I love talking to users. I typically answer every email I receive personally. Feel free to reach out, and looking forward to talk to anybody.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Ken, and I appreciate you joining me on the Lightning Junkies podcast.
Thank you very much.
There you have it. That was the first episode of the Lightning Junkies podcast. Did you like it? Did you learn anything? If so, please consider chipping in to my crowdfunding campaign or otherwise tipping me at the links in the show notes. It would help out greatly. It is my goal to have this show be a primary source of income for me and be able to dedicate my life to Bitcoin and the Lightning Network exclusively. If you like the podcast, please consider subscribing on Google Podcasts, iTunes, and multiple other services that this podcast is distributed to. You can find that all again in the show notes. Please don't hesitate to leave a review or otherwise send me feedback. I need that in order to keep the show improving and getting better over time. For now, I'll see you on the Lightning Network.